Bone is a very dynamic tissue, so even after that initial ossification, it's always changing throughout our lifetime. This relies on the actions of osteoclasts to remove existing tissue and osteoblasts to create new bone tissue. This occurs in all bones so that the entire skeletal system will be replaced about once every 10 years, though the rate of individual bones varies and spongy bone is replaced faster than compact bone. This allows bones to respond to the environment by changing shape and adjusting to stress as our activities change. Bone is also quite capable of repair. Bones also change on a day-to-day basis for calcium ion regulation. Calcium homeostasis is essential to functioning of the body. So, calcium ion levels in the blood are one of the variables our body continuously keeps tabs on. That is because calcium ions are used for many functions in the body. It is essential for the contraction of muscles. We'll see in the next chapter that without calcium ions, the proteins within muscle cells simply will not associate to allow movement to occur. Calcium ions are also critical for signaling cells to release certain chemicals. The nervous system relies on this for neurons to signal other neurons. So without the correct level of calcium ions, the nervous system would be unable to function. In addition to that, blood clotting also requires calcium. So, while calcium is important for maintaining strong bone tissue for the skeletal system, blood calcium will always be prioritized because we simply could not function without muscles and nerves working. Our body uses the bones as a bank for calcium, storing calcium within it should we require it for maintaining blood calcium levels. So it's movement of calcium in and out of our bones that's a major factor in determining blood levels of calcium. Calcium will move into bone as osteoblasts use it to build new bone tissue, and calcium moves out of the bone and into the blood as osteoclasts break down bone tissue, releasing the minerals contained within it. In a healthy body that ingests enough calcium, both healthy calcium-rich bones and the correct blood calcium level can be maintained. However, calcium and vitamin D, which helps us absorb calcium, are the two most common deficiencies in the U.S. So, supplements are often necessary. There are two hormones that maintain correct calcium levels in the blood. They are parathyroid hormone, or PTH for short, and calcitonin. These act kind of like kids on a teeter-totter, working together in opposite directions to maintain healthy levels. Of the two, parathyroid hormone is the big kid. This is secreted by the parathyroid glands which are on the surface of the thyroid gland. They are the most powerful regulators of blood calcium levels because this hormone has not one, but 3 effects on blood calcium levels. First, it will increase the formation and the activation of osteoclasts. So as we have more osteoclasts working harder, that will break down more bone tissue, releasing that calcium into the blood. PTH also stimulates the kidney to reabsorb more calcium ions as urine is created, which means that we lose less with the urine. And 3, PTH is going to activate calcitriol or active vitamin D. And thinking back to the integumentary system, vitamin D was critical for absorption of calcium. So with more of that, we will absorb more calcium from the food we eat in the small intestine. So this image shows you those different ways that PTH works. Here we see PTH causing osteoclast formation and activity to be stimulated. So that will release calcium into the blood. Also, PTH works on the kidneys to suck back in calcium ions. Less is lost in the urine and more can be returned to the blood. PTH also stimulates the kidney to create more active vitamin D or calcitriol, which causes the small intestine to absorb more calcium from food. That calcium also goes into the blood to raise levels there. So in these 3 ways, we see more calcium in the blood, and blood levels can return back up to homeostasis. You'll see calcitonin is mentioned here too, which is our small kid on the teeter-totter. Calcitonin is released by the thyroid gland, and it only has one effect, and that is to depress osteoclast activity, promote osteoblast activity. And as osteoblasts build up new bone tissue, they are removing calcium from the blood and using it to lay down more bone tissue. So osteoclasts, via PTH, are carving out or crushing bone tissue and releasing calcium from the bank. Osteoblasts, via calcitonin, are depositing calcium in the bank from the blood. So, when blood calcium levels get too high, first off, we don't see PTH, and just by not being there, we're going to see blood calcium dip back down, since it's so powerful. We'll also see calcitonin secreted from the thyroid gland to take that blood calcium out and deposit it on bone tissue. Bone is also highly capable of repair. It's very vascular, meaning that there's plenty of nutrients and oxygen provided for cells to create new tissue. However, it takes time. Just the formation of that mineralized matrix, the secretion of these ions to create these crystals of hydroxyapatite is time intensive. There's no getting around it. So even though we can repair broken bones quite well, we have to wait for it to be complete. There are many different types of fractures based on which way the bones are damaged and even the age of the individual. But repair takes place in a very common, straightforward way. First, the broken bone and associated tissues being damaged is going to cause bleeding. Remember, in every osteon, we're going to see blood vessels in the central canal and running perpendicular to the diaphysis. We'll see the periosteum, which is highly vascular. So when these tissues are damaged, the blood vessels housed within will break, and we'll see significant bleeding. This leads to the creation of a hematoma or blood clot, and this will cause temporary restriction of blood loss. A few days later, 2 to 3 days later, we'll see the formation of a callus. First, this is a fibrous callus with lots of collagen fibers that are secreted by fibroblasts between and around the fragments to knit them together. And then we'll see cartilage laid down. So the callus becomes fibrocartilaginous. And cartilage is more resilient than just collagen fibers, but it's still prone to breakage here. Then, like endochondral ossification, that cartilaginous callus is going to be replaced by the trabeculae of spongy bone tissue. This is the time-intensive process that can take months, and immobilization is critical here because spongy bone is not strong. It's got lots of spaces, it's very delicate. We're going to have to wait until that spongy bone is modified in order to use these bones. This can take months, but slowly that spongy bone will be remodeled to form compact bone on the exterior surfaces, and we'll still see spongy bone housed within the bone. During this stage, complete immobilization is not necessary and is actually detrimental as it will lead to the surrounding muscle, tendons, ligaments, atrophy and growing weak. This image shows these 4 steps. We see the broken blood vessels causing bleeding here and forming a clot or hematoma. After a few days, we'll see fibroblasts migrating to the scene and forming first fibers, dense connective tissue-like callus, then cartilage to create a more resilient callus, though still quite weak when compared to bone. Then osteoclasts will break down that cartilage. Osteoblasts will secrete bone to create a spongy bone callus. And finally, over time, that spongy bone will be modified as necessary to create compact bone. Usually, by the time this process is complete, we have a fully functional bone with maybe just a little thickening at the surface to indicate where the damage took place. Lastly, a note about marrow tissue. Hematopoietic tissue is tissue that leads to blood cell formation. This takes place in the red bone marrow. When we are born as newborns and infants, our bones are pretty much all filled with red marrow. But as we age, red is replaced by yellow marrow. By the time we're adults, it's only the axial skeleton, the center of the body, and the proximal ends of the epiphyses that contain red marrow. The bones of the limbs are filled with yellow marrow, which is basically adipose tissue. So when you make a soup stock, this is why we use the bones, because they contain that fatty, delicious marrow, which then ends up making the soup.